Feli from Germany. All right, we sound good. What's up with Americans and nudity? What does that even mean? Is there some type of stereotype about Americans and nudity that I don't know about? Because it may be in person, but like there's nudity literally everywhere. So I mean, it's in our movies, it's on social media, there's problems with it with kids. Well, I'm assuming it's got to be like in person. I know you guys have like nude beaches and stuff like that. Is it something like that? I don't know. We're going to dive in. Feli does a fantastic job with the videos that she creates. One of my favorite creators from Germany. Actually, she's probably my favorite creator from Germany that I've reacted to. So let's just dive straight into this one. Figure out what I'm super curious. I have no idea what's going on. Smash the like button. Let's get started.
Do Germans really go into a mixed sauna naked? Are Americans too uptight about nudity? And is Michelangelo's David statue porn? Let's talk about it. Servus and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio on and off since 2016. Maybe you guys heard about it. About 2 months ago, a story that had to do with Michelangelo's David statue and a school in Florida made huge headlines all over the world. And it all goes back to the fact that David isn't wearing pants. Instead, he is, in fact, fully naked. And just a couple weeks ago, there was yet another controversy about the statue. This time in Glasgow, where an Italian restaurant wanted to put up an ad that featured a picture of David holding a slice of pizza. This was the poster they wanted to hang up in the subway, but the company that runs the ad spaces had, quote, modesty concerns, so the restaurant ended up adjusting the ad so that now only David's upper body is showing. He's still naked, of course, but I guess the big concern here was his genitals. And for me, this kind of made me think about this whole topic of nudity again and how nudity is perceived in different cultures. When we look at the US in comparison to Western Europe, for example, I know that many Americans think of this stereotype of the rampant Europeans who are running around naked all the time and are super liberal about anything sex-related, while Americans kind of have this image of being rather prude and uptight in this regard. But how much of these stereotypes is actually true? How is nudity handled in everyday life in Germany versus the US? What exactly happened in Florida? From what we know, 6th grade students at the Tallahassee Classical School were shown pictures of Michelangelo's David statue in arts class, who, as we know, is depicted naked. The class also included references to Michelangelo's creation of Adam painting, as well as Botticelli's Birth of Venus, which both also show some nudity. The school is still relatively young. It was founded in 2020, has about 400 students, and it's a Christian charter school, meaning that it's publicly funded and tuition-free, but it's run independently. So unlike regular public schools in the US, they don't follow the curriculum and rules of the local school district, which means that they're more flexible in how they run the school and they can accommodate their students' needs more individually. They actually had a partnership with Hillsdale College in Michigan, which is a private Christian liberal arts college that provided the school with a curriculum. And that curriculum includes instruction about Renaissance art in 6th grade. So far, so good. Now, the school says they have a protocol of informing parents before teaching, quote, potentially controversial curriculum in case they wanted their child to skip that lesson. But this year, there was some kind of miscommunication apparently, and that notice ultimately was not sent out. As a result, 2 of the parents complained about not being informed about this, and one parent even called the lesson pornographic, which is a statement that made it into a lot of the headlines. Then at the end of March, the principal of the school, Hope Carrasquilla, who had been the principal for less than a year, was given an ultimatum by the school board to either resign or get fired.
That's fucked up. Seriously, dude, this is why I can't stand some people. Seriously, you're gonna get pissed off about a statue and get someone fired because of it? That's so effed up. Oh my gosh. Of course it was in America too. Come on.
But according to her, she wasn't told what the reason for this was, but just assumed that it had to do with the whole David situation. The school later published a statement in which they said that there were 2 additional incidents that played a role here. Now, all of this happened in the midst of a nationwide debate about laws that regulate school curriculums and let parents chime in on what they do and don't want their kids to learn. One example being the Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill, also often referred to as the Don't Say Gay Bill, as it also bans classroom discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity up to grade 12 in Florida schools. The story got a lot of traction both within the US and internationally, but in other countries it's mostly been met with incomprehension. Dario Nadella, the mayor of Florence, which is where the David statue is located, tweeted, "Mistaking art for pornography is just ridiculous." And he invited the principal to come to Florence. Cecilia Olberg, the director of the Galleria dell'Accademia, followed his lead and invited Carrasquilla, the school board, parents, and the student body to view the purity of the statue. She also said in an interview with Associated Press, "To think that David could be pornographic means truly not understanding the contents of the Bible, not understanding Western culture, and not understanding Renaissance art."
I would consider it's definitely not pornographic. Porn is like having sex, not just an image, like an art piece of the human body. Like, that's not really porn. People just get off their rockers, man. I can tell you. Everyone's upset about something constantly. I mean, I'm sure you guys are too. Everyone is. I'm just fed up with it.
De La Sera even reported about this on the front page, and they featured a cartoon of David with his genitals covered by an image of Uncle Sam and the word shame.
What?
At least that's what Associated Press reported. Unfortunately, I couldn't find that cartoon, but I'm assuming it has to do with copyright issues. Now, in the aftermath of all of this, Hillsdale College ended up cutting ties with Tallahassee Classical School, and Carrasquilla actually ended up following all of those invitations and traveled to Florence to visit the David statue in person. She also said in an interview with NPR,
I didn't hear anything about this. This is all news to me. They cut ties with the elementary school because they were mad that it got shown, or they were mad that there was like an outrage and they fired the principal.
"I made the assumption that the letter went out and I didn't follow up on it. It is my responsibility to make sure these things happen. But honestly, we did not have to send out a letter regarding Renaissance art," which I would argue...
Yeah. I mean, she's going to make her argument. Yeah, they were trying to be nice sending out the letter. It didn't get sent out. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, was it a little girl that saw it? I have 2 daughters. They have a brother. They've seen a penis before. Okay? Like... Oh, gosh.
To send out a letter regarding Renaissance art, which I would argue is a statement that a lot of people in Italy, Germany, and other European countries would agree with, and something that many people have been wondering about in the first place. Why do you even need to inform anyone about a harmless statue? I mean, speaking from my personal experience, a lot of Europeans have seen many of those statues in real life at a way younger age, and if anything, we'd kind of laugh and giggle about them as kids. But this is where the cultural differences come in. Nudity simply plays a different role in different cultures. Now, of course, I can only speak from a German perspective, but let's take a look at a few everyday situations and how this topic is handled in Germany compared to the US. Number 1, going to the sauna. I feel like this one is pretty well known, and people who move to Germany from abroad talk about it all the time. But yes, it is in fact normal, even more so required, to be fully naked when you go to a public sauna in Germany. And yes, those are usually mixed saunas, co-ed as Americans say. However, most saunas do allow you to wrap your towel around you, so you don't actually have to sit there fully exposed if you don't want to. But don't be surprised if some of the other visitors do. Now, I'm not actually a big fan of going to the sauna myself. Nalf would probably be the better expert here.
We have a sauna in the gym I go to. Nobody's in there naked. I mean, if you go into the locker room right next to the sauna to go to the bathroom or go get changed or something, yeah. I don't know what the women's looks like, but the men are walking around free balling it. And usually the old dudes, you know, I don't shower at the gym. I live 10 minutes from the gym. I'm like, I'll just shower when I get home. But yeah, there is nudity there, just not in the sauna, especially co-ed. That would be a huge shock for people here if that happened.
Goes back to Finnish sauna culture. Supposedly it's healthier and more sanitary to go to the sauna naked. But at the end of the day, it's up to whoever runs the sauna to make the rules. And there are some places in Germany that do allow visitors to wear a bathing bathing suit as well. In the US, on the other hand, bathing suits are usually mandatory, nude saunas are super rare, and even with everyone wearing their bathing suit, they're still usually separated by gender. Number 2 ties right in with the previous topic because it's about the popularity of FKK in Germany. In English, usually referred to as nudism or naturism. FKK stands for Freikörperkultur, so literally free body culture. And even though many people always assume that among all of the crazy Europeans, Germans would be the more conservative ones, Germany is actually the hotspot for FKK culture, together with France and Scandinavia.
Really?
In the late 19th century, the first FKK association was founded in Essen, Germany. Then in 1920, the German island of Sylt opened the first official nude beach. And a little bit later, the nudist culture was booming in the GDR, so in East Germany. Now, of course, it's not like you'll just see naked people run all over German cities. Just like in the US, it's not usually permitted to be naked in public, but there are designated FKK areas at lakes, rivers, beaches, at public pools, and in many parks where people are allowed to hang out naked. And they do. And even though these are special designated areas, they're not usually hidden away somewhere with a visual barrier. So as a kid growing up in Munich, it was pretty common that when you went swimming in the summer or just went through the English Garden in Munich, you'd walk right past them. My parents always said something like, "Das sind die Nackerten."
I love the German language. Honestly, I think that learning German, I'm going to attempt it. I was watching a little bit on just learning like basic German on my TikTok feed when I was going through it. And, it's the most similar to English for me personally than any other language that I've heard. Like when I hear German spoken, it sounds very eerily similar to the way that we talk. I don't know what that is. I don't know why I feel that way, but yeah.
Das sind die Nackerten, and for some reason, they always played volleyball. But all jokes aside, even though the majority of Germans prefer wearing clothes, or at least a bathing suit, seeing naked people in public is pretty normal to us. It's also slowly becoming more socially accepted for women to be topless in areas where men are allowed to be topless. There were actually a couple court cases about that recently.
No complaints there? Yeah, go for it.
Common for little kids to run around naked in Germany, whether that's in their own yard, at the beach, or even in a park. Apparently that was a big thing for me as a kid. My parents tell me that I didn't really like wearing a bathing suit at the beach when I was little. So we have vacation photos from when I was like 4 when we were in Spain, and my parents and even my baby brother are posing for the camera fully dressed, and I'm just standing there completely naked, but I look like the happiest kid in the world.
So we have this a little bit. Children is definitely a little bit different, especially if you're at like it's like summertime and you're at like a beach or something like that. If a kid's running around naked at a certain age, I wouldn't say it's super common, but like if you see it, you wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, like it would be like, oh okay, yeah, some kid running around naked.
There's even a popular children's song from the 80s by Rolf Zukowski.
My daughter did it. Like, listen to that. Naki die, naked. Like, it's so close. It's so similar.
Now, of course, nude beaches do also exist in the US, but they're usually more tucked away from the rest, and you don't really have to worry about running into naked people in Central Park in New York, for example. Not usually, at least. Speaking of swimming and
yeah. You'll run into some naked people in New York. I can tell you that much. And LA. You go to like New York or LA, homeless people, yeah, they'll be defecating on the street in front of you in New York.
Pool. What's the situation like with communal showers that you might go to after the pool, at the gym, or if you play sports? Are they group showers or are there separate stalls? Do people get fully naked or wear a bathing suit? And are they co-ed or separated? Now in Germany, I'd say it's pretty mixed. At public pools, they're usually open floor plan showers, but separated for men and women, and often a family shower as the third option. Some people get fully naked in those, others don't. Typically, it's the older people who are more likely to be naked, but they're not the only ones.
Yeah, I feel like once you get to a certain age, you're just like, I don't care anymore. Just like, let it out. Who cares? You're just like, I'm 55, 65. My balls are hanging free. Who gives a shit?
I've been to water parks, though, where they had single stalls for everyone. Now, I never played a team sport, but I know that for the most part, if you play a club sport in Germany, it's pretty common for the whole team to shower afterwards. My brother said that for him playing soccer growing up, when they were like 13, they'd still keep on their underwear or swim trunks in the shower, but the older they got, the more common it was for everyone to shower naked. Now, from what I've heard and read on the internet, it seems like in the US, depending on where you live and what type of school you went to, open communal showers can either be very common or not at all.
It's definitely where you live. One thing we actually I talked about this with my wife the other day. I don't know how we got on this topic. We're, I think, at dinner with somebody, and apparently now in all of the schools where we live here in Tennessee, they don't change for like gym, because, you know, they have like PE, physical education, or gym class. They don't go into locker rooms anymore and change into gym clothes, which was like super common when I was a kid 25 years ago. Gosh, I'm getting old. Yeah, it was very common. Like, we were constantly in the locker room. You would get naked. Some guys would take showers. She's right, though. The older you get, like once I got into high school, that's when dudes really just didn't care anymore. Get done with football practice, they are all just undressing. So
For both extremes, some people had communal showers in their college dorms, so they had to shower in those. Some said they've never had to shower with other people in their life. Let me know in the comments what your experience is with this. One story that I can share is that whenever I went to a music festival in Germany, like the ones where you camp for a few days, there was always one big shower tent, separated by gender, but then inside the tent there were no curtains or stalls or anything, so some people wore their bathing suits, some were naked, but it really didn't matter either way. The 2 times I've been to a music festival in the US, there were always single shower stalls, so my guess would be that the open plan communal showers are probably a little less common in the US. Number 4, the doctor's office. When you go to the gynecologist in the US, they usually give you a paper gown for you to wear and then leave the room so that you can get changed in private. And I'm pretty sure it's similar at other doctors where you have to get undressed, like at the urologist or dermatologist. Well, not in Germany. I remember when I was a teenager, they would always tell us to wear a dress or a long shirt if we felt nervous or uncomfortable about our first gynecologist appointment, because you're not gonna get anything else to wear. The doctor usually has a little changing stall in their office, like a curtain with a stool or something where you can get undressed and put your clothes, but they'll typically stay in the room as you do so, and if they're like my gynecologist, they'll even keep talking to you the whole time. And at most other doctors, if it comes to a situation where you have to get undressed, they don't even have a changing room for the most part. Every time I've done a full body skin exam at the dermatologist in Germany, I would kind of just get undressed right in front of them. A German friend of mine also told me that when she went to the dermatologist in the US, she almost felt like she was wasting her time because she said they weren't even looking everywhere. Number 5, breastfeeding, one of the most natural things in the world. Now, this one is actually very interesting because it seems like breastfeeding in public is actually more socially accepted in the US than it is in Germany.
Really? That's crazy. Yeah, I was going to say, we don't have an issue with breastfeeding in public. I've seen some videos before where like there was a small freak out or something. Usually not an issue. If the child is like really old, you know, like if someone is breastfeeding like an 8-year-old, which I don't know if you believe that or not, but that does happen sometimes. I've never seen it, but I've heard of it happening. You know, that's where someone might get a little upset. But besides that, yeah, we don't really care. You can breastfeed wherever you want.
To this study from 2015, only 44% of German women found it perfectly natural to nurse babies in public, compared to 57% in the US. At the same time, I've seen YouTube videos where Americans will say something like this.
Another thing that was kind of shocking that would have totally been like a front page story in America was one time when I was in the beer garden in Regrovi Sadi, a woman was breastfeeding her child openly, and the kid was standing on the bench next to her on his own 2 feet, pausing between gulps to have a conversation, presumably, and she was just standing there bare-breasted for all to see. I don't find anything wrong with this, but in America, this is so controversial that they actually talk about this on the news, whether women should be allowed to breastfeed their children in public.
Well, this is what I just said. How old was the kid? You know, if he was stopping and talking, I mean, to each their own. If you want to breastfeed your child, like, it's completely fine. Nobody cares. It's just, you know, I feel like it's pretty common for most people to, you know, kind of like phase out the breastfeeding by like 4 years old, 3 years old at the latest. I could be wrong though. Like that's women. All right. if my wife was like, we're breastfeeding till this time, I would have been like, okay, but I think we did like a year and a half and then we were pretty much finished after that.
Is it accepted or controversial? In Germany, I'd say that for the most part, it's accepted and kind of ties in with her overall tolerance towards nudity, but there are always those one or two people that find it inappropriate for whatever reason, and there's a pretty controversial public debate about this in Germany, which is kind of odd for a country that has no problem with nudity in other situations. Fact is, Germany doesn't actually have any laws regulating this, neither in terms of protecting breastfeeding in public, nor restricting it. So if you want to breastfeed your baby at a restaurant, for example, it's up to the restaurant whether they allow that or not. Here in the US, however, all 50 states have laws that protect breastfeeding in public and private, and more than half even have laws about providing spaces to breastfeed in the workplace. At the same time, though, apparently those laws can overlap with public indecency laws, which sometimes leads to women getting in trouble for breastfeeding after all, like in this case in Georgia. When it comes to personal experience, the other day I saw a woman breastfeed while she was standing in line for the checkout at Kroger, and nobody seemed offended by it or said anything. So this one seems difficult to analyze. Maybe you can let me know about your experiences in the comments below.
Kind of a weird subject that I don't think anyone is interested in like getting involved with. You don't want to be the person that's like, I'm super against breastfeeding in public. Everyone's going to look at you like you're a psycho. And then, you know, vice versa. It's like, whatever, stop.
Last but not least, number 6, nudity in media. If you zap through German TV channels, even in the middle of the day, you'll notice that it's not uncommon to see a naked butt or boobs here and there. It's safe to say that German productions and media regulations are a lot more liberal in that regard, compared to the US, where even some episodes of Rick Steves' travel show couldn't be aired before 10 p.m. because you could sometimes see sculptures and paintings containing nudity in them. Rick Steves also has his very own story in regards to the David statue, by the way. He had the David on one of his book covers, but was told that they needed to add a fig leaf to cover up David's private parts because some bookstores in the US felt uncomfortable displaying it like that. And daytime talk shows on American TV have to beep out every single curse word.
I guess it would be pretty strong.
Yeah. Or use fake curse words like fudge, which of course doesn't have anything to do with nudity per se, but it kind of ties in with the whole prudish image here. In Germany, you'll just see topless women in tabloid newspapers. The country's biggest newspaper, Bild, even had them on the cover page for the longest time. Pretty sexist if you ask me. They should show naked men as well. And you'll also see erotic magazines, such as Playboy, openly displayed at gas stations and supermarkets, usually right by the checkout. In the US, magazines like that are usually covered up somehow. In addition to that, I've actually mentioned this one a few times, last time in the video about sex education with Sarah and Kevin, the German youth magazine Bravo that many generations grew up with had and still has a sexual education category where readers can send in their questions about love, relationships, friendships, puberty, sex, or whatever else they have questions about, and a team of experts answers them in the magazine. This also included a category that was called That's Me, where they always had one nude photo of a guy and one of a girl in their teens. I believe they moved up the age limit over time, together with questions about what they liked and didn't like about their bodies, which was basically a way to support body positivity and reassure insecure teenagers that every body looks different and that that's okay and beautiful. And if we look at the digital media world, one example that comes to mind here is Instagram, run by the American tech company Meta, that has a super strict ban on showing female nipples. Those have to be censored, otherwise the picture gets deleted, while male nipples are totally fine, of course.
This is pretty crazy because they can get away with it. Like, I watched a music video for a song a couple of weeks ago, and in it, woman fully nude in the music video. There's no restrictions on it. Anyone can watch it, but they just blur out the nipple, or put tape over it. It's not even tape. It just looks like skin. And I'm like, just show the damn nipple. Like, it's fine. Like, we're looking at a full naked woman right now, but because the nipple is removed, for some reason, this is allowed. You know, this is changing quite a bit, though. I'm going to give my American take on this from living here my entire life. Growing up, nudity was less in media, but as probably over the last 10 years, there's starting to become a lot more of it. I know she said there's cutoffs sometimes on public TV, but for the most part, nobody really watches public television or you don't turn your local TV on. Everyone either has Hulu or Netflix or HBO or, services like that, Amazon. And when you're on those platforms, there's just there's nudity everywhere. You can watch basically anything. There's no restrictions. You can make kids profiles, but for the most part, it's just kind of opened up. So I think that the Americans are being a little bit more lenient on it. A lot more people in the US are less religious than they were 20 years ago. Religion has kind of taken like a move back. Feels like it's taken a stronger move forward again now, though. So it's interesting. I know we're way more religious than most European countries, though, or at least Christian.
Or not so fun, depends. They actually have an artificial intelligence that scans whether a nipple is female or male. At the end of the day, whether we find these things normal or inappropriate comes down to how we were socialized. Now, of course, this is going to be different for every person and for every situation, but if we were to summarize it, I'd say that in Germany, nudity is just overall considered a rather normal and natural part of life, while in the US, nudity is often sexualized by default, even if the context of the situation isn't sexual at all. But where does that come from? How come that in two wealthy, democratic Western countries, these topics are treated so differently? Why is nudity such a taboo in the US? Now, that's a very complex question to answer, and we won't be able to fully solve that mystery in the remaining 5 minutes of this video, but I did stumble across a few different factors that might possibly play a role here. The number one reason that people bring up in this context is the Puritan history of the US that goes all the way back to the 1600s, when the first settlers from the Old World arrived here, many of them fleeing religious persecution. Pilgrims who founded the Plymouth colony were so-called separatists, for example, who separated from the Church of England, but there were also groups such as the Puritans who wanted to purify the church. They followed pretty strict rules that prohibited things like gambling, fancy clothing, smoking in public, living with Indians, missing Sunday services, celebrating Christmas, and of course things like sex outside of marriage, masturbation, homosexuality, and adultery, so cheating on your spouse. That one even had the death penalty. Now, there's one thing that I read quite a lot about in newspaper articles, blog posts, forums, etc., but I couldn't really find any scholarly sources for this, so please let me know if you know more about this. But it said that the Puritans also believed that all nudity outside of sex was evil, and a few articles even mentioned that they went as far as avoiding bathing as a result of this. Now, whether that last part is true or not, I don't know, but what's for sure is that religion seems to play a big role here. Some even mentioned that this goes back to the story of Adam and Eve and how their nudity is connected to sin. Now, after the settlers, the religious journey of the US continues through the First and Second Awakening, the rise of American evangelicalism, and eventually brings us to the 20th century, where after the so-called sexual revolution of the 1960s, purity culture started to gain in popularity in the 1990s. Purity culture includes young people promising to stay abstinent until marriage. There are purity rings and even purity balls where daughters make virginity pledges to their fathers.
Mormons are super big into this, but not really. I don't even know if I want to get on this subject with Mormons and edging. I don't know. Google it. Google Mormons edging. You'll figure out what I'm talking about.
Declining, religion is still a topic that makes the United States stand out within the developed world. Because what we usually see is the poorer a country, the more religious its people. But the US is quite the exception here. Super wealthy country, and according to this survey from 2018, over 50% of Americans say that religion is very important in their lives. In Germany, this number is at only 10%. In Sweden and Norway, it's even lower. And I can confirm this from personal experience. I don't think I know anyone in Germany who actually goes to church every week, while I know quite a few people my age in the US who do. And another survey from 2014 about global morality shows that about 30% of Americans, so almost 1 in 3 people, believe that premarital sex is unacceptable, compared to 6% in Germany.
That's crazy. I did not know it was that high. When are these stats from? When did I can't see right here. 2000 I have it paused. Does that say 13 or 15? Maybe 19. I don't know. I'll figure out right now. That's crazy though.
And lining up with this, sex is for Americans. So almost 1 in 3 people believe that premarital sex is unacceptable, compared to 6%
definitely way
in Germany.
different now.
And lining up with this, abstinence-only sex education is predominant in some parts of the country. Still, over 90% of Americans do engage in premarital sex, which as a result leads to a high number in teen pregnancies. But if you want to learn more about all of that, make sure to check out this video. And we see this reflected when we look at
education
politics,
video.
too. The whole political spectrum in the US is actually shifted to the right compared to politics in Europe. So the country overall...
Yeah, median party, this is probably a little bit closer to right about here now in the US. It's shifted massively over the last 4 years.
Is rather conservative in comparison. Now, another factor that might play a role, particularly in regards to my point of...
Wait, hold on. Am I reading that the correct way? Median party. The median party. Yeah. It's saying that the median party is pushed a little bit more to the left. But yeah, for the most part, even people who are a little bit more left-minded, people kind of like me who have left views and right views that don't really land in any party. I'm not a part of a party. Those people kind of are leaning a little bit more to the right now just because of some of the crazy stuff with the left.
Is that Americans seem to be more suspicious of strangers and more worried about crime. So for many Americans, the first thought that comes to mind when they hear kids being naked at the beach is child pornography, kidnapping, human trafficking, you name it, even if this doesn't line up with reality. In fact, this survey from 2014 shows that even when crime is statistically decreasing, like it had been for 20 years at the time of the survey, Americans were actually more afraid of crime and believed that it had increased. Now, these are probably just a few of many social factors that play a role in this cultural difference. Let me know in the comments why you think this is different in Germany and the US. What I find interesting is that even though I said at the beginning of the video that many Europeans think of the US as being prude, the country also has a reputation for sex being a pretty big part of pop culture.
That's what I was gonna say.
I mean, sex sells, right? And maybe even more so in a country where the human body and sexual desires have been declared the enemy.
Really good video. She's kind of right though. I mean, like, to think that most Americans are weird about nudity when we literally have like sex in our face constantly here. I mean, it's everywhere. I can't look at anything. Social media, whatever. There's always some type of sexual thing going on. Music, television. And I'm not saying I personally have a problem with it because I don't really care. So, all right, that was a really good video. It was a long video. Hopefully you guys stuck around. If you did stick around to the end of this video, hit the like button and I'll see you guys in the next one. Appreciate you watching. Bye.